The rain swept across Beijing, painting the city in silver streaks under the glow of the street lamps. At Jingshan's secondary school, the corridors were already empty, the echo of hurried footsteps long faded. Only one classroom remained lit, faint and flickering as the storm pressed against the windows. Inside sat Zhang Wei, a thin boy with tired eyes, hunched over his desk. His teacher, Li Wen, was gathering books when he noticed the boy had not moved. Something about his stillness felt heavy, unnatural. "Zhang Wei," Li Wen called softly, "it is late. You should go home." The boy lifted his head slowly. His face was pale, his lips trembling as though holding back words that should not be spoken. Then he stood, walked towards the desk, and grasped the edge with both hands. "Teacher Li," he whispered, his voice cracked by fear.
"Please, save me."
"And save everyone who could help." Li Wen frowned, unsettled. Outside, thunder rolled, shaking the glass panes. He thought it might be a cry for help, perhaps family troubles or bullying. But Zhang Wei's eyes told another story. They held the weight of something darker, something that did not belong in the ordinary world. Before Li Wen could speak again, the classroom lights flickered, then dimmed into a suffocating gloom. The storm outside seemed to fall silent, leaving only a low hum that resonated deep in the walls. Zhang Wei clutched his sleeve now, breathing hard. "They are already here," he muttered, voice quivering. "If they take me tonight, you will never see me again. And then everyone else will vanish too." The teacher's pulse quickened. He wanted to laugh it off, to dismiss it as a child's imagination. But the shadows at the edges of the room began to stir, stretching longer than they should, twisting as though they were alive. And in that moment, Li Wen realized the boy's plea was not madness. It was a warning. Li Wen tightened his grip on Zhang Wei's wrist, pulling him gently towards the door. The boy resisted, shaking his head in panic. "You do not understand," Zhang Wei said, his voice breaking. "The more you move, the closer they come. They feed on fear, and every step you take in the dark, they follow." The teacher looked down the corridor. The fluorescent bulbs flickered one by one, as though something invisible passed beneath them. The hum grew louder, a vibration that seemed to settle inside his chest. The school, once familiar and ordinary, felt alien now. Desks, lockers, and bulletin boards stretched into shadows that warped and twisted, their edges no longer straight. He could hear faint voices, whispers crawling across the walls in a language he did not recognize. "Zhang Wei," Li Wen whispered back, forcing calmness into his tone. "We must get out. Whatever this is, it cannot hold us here." But as he stepped into the hallway, the air grew colder. He felt watched, not by eyes, but by something deeper, as if the building itself had awoken. Then it happened. A shadow detached itself from the corner and slid across the floor like water. It had no face, no form, only the outline of something human, stretching thin and long. It stopped directly in front of them, blocking the path. Zhang Wei froze. "That is one of them," he breathed. "If it touches you, you will never come back." Li Wen stood still, the weight of decision pressing upon him. He was no longer only a teacher. He was the guardian of this boy, and perhaps of something much greater. The shadow began to rise, pulling itself upwards until it towered above them both. And then, it leaned forward. The shadow swayed as if caught in an invisible breeze, though the air around them was deathly still. Its outline quivered, stretching into thin strands that reached across the floor like fingers. Each strand pulsed, as though it carried breath. Li Wen pulled Zhang Wei closer, feeling the boy's trembling body pressed against his side. He forced himself not to show fear, though his throat tightened. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The shadow leaned further, its shape bending unnaturally. From its center came a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a sigh, but something in between. It was the sound of breathing, slow, heavy, and deliberate. Zhang Wei's voice cracked. "It knows your name now. Once it knows you, it will never stop following." Li Wen's eyes narrowed.
"How?"
The boy did not answer. His silence was louder than any truth he could have spoken. The shadow slithered forward. Instinct took over. Liwen grabbed the nearest chair and hurled it into the darkness. The chair struck the floor, splintering into pieces. For a moment, the shadow recoiled, its form flickering like smoke in the wind. But then it began to knit itself back together. Zhang Wei seized Li Wen's sleeve. "We cannot fight it here. There is only one place in the school where they cannot enter. We must reach the old library." The word struck Li Wen with unease. The old library had been closed for years, its doors locked and its windows sealed. Students whispered about it being cursed, though the truth was more practical. Renovations had been abandoned, leaving it to gather dust and silence. Now, as the shadow crept closer, Li Wen realized it might be their only chance. "Run," he ordered, pulling Zhang Wei down the corridor. Behind them, the breathing grew faster. Their footsteps echoed through the empty halls as they raced towards the far end of the school. The storm outside pounded against the windows, each strike of rain like fists demanding entry. Zhang Wei led the way now, his fear sharpened into urgency. "Hurry," he said, his voice trembling, "before it catches us." At last, they reached a rusted metal door. Its paint was chipped, its lock sealed with a heavy chain. The sign above read in faded letters, "Library closed." Li Wen grabbed the chain and pulled hard, but it held firm. The shadow's hum grew nearer, its breath rattling down the hallway like the sound of many lungs breathing at once. Zhang Wei dropped to his knees and pulled something from his school bag. A small brass key, worn with age. He slipped it into the lock. The chain shuddered, then snapped open as though the key had been made for it. The boy glanced up at Li Wen, his face pale. "My grandfather gave me this. He told me never to use it unless tonight came." The teacher had no time to question. He pushed the door open and shoved Zhang Wei inside. They stumbled into the darkness, and the door slammed shut behind them with a sound like thunder. Silence. Li Wen turned, trying to catch his breath. The air inside was heavy with dust, yet strangely calm. It was as if the storm outside did not exist here. Shelves towered in endless rows, filled with ancient volumes that seemed far older than the school itself. Zhang Wei whispered, "They cannot enter. Not here. This place was built before them. But we are not safe yet." Li Wen frowned. "What do you mean?" The boy raised his eyes, fear glimmering like glass. "Something else lives in this library. Something that watches everyone who dares to step inside." And then, from deep within the rows of books, a faint rustling began. Not the rustle of pages, but the sound of footsteps. The footsteps grew louder, slow and deliberate, each one pressing against the wooden floor as though the weight behind them was immense. Li Wen held Zhang Wei close, his eyes straining to pierce the gloom between the towering shelves. "Who is there?" Li Wen called, his voice firm though his chest throbbed with unease. No answer came. Only the soft drag of movement, the sound of something shifting books along the shelves. Dust drifted down in lazy spirals, disturbed by unseen hands. Then, from the far aisle, a figure emerged. It was tall, draped in robes that seemed woven from parchment itself. Strips of faded paper fluttered where sleeves should have been, and on its face lay no features at all, only a mask of blank ivory. Its hands, long and skeletal, clutched a book bound in black leather. Zhang Wei gasped. "The keeper." The figure tilted its head, the mask glinting in the faint light. When it spoke, the voice was not a sound but a vibration in their bones. "You bring danger into my sanctuary." Li Wen stepped forward, instinctively shielding his student. "We had no choice. Shadows were chasing us." The keeper's head turned slightly, as if listening to something far away. "Yes, I hear them breathing. They hunger for the boy." Zhang Wei's voice shook. "Can you stop them?" The keeper's mask tilted back to face him. "Nothing stops them forever. But there are truths hidden in these shelves. Words older than darkness itself. To wield them, there must be a price." Li Wen's fists tightened. "What price?" The keeper raised its book slowly, the sound of old leather groaning as it opened. The pages glowed faintly, light bleeding into the shadows. "The price it said, is memory. To hold knowledge that can drive them away, you must give something of yourself. A piece of who you are will be gone forever. The air grew heavier. Zhang Wei clutched his teacher's arm, his face pleading, "Teacher Li, don't.
Please don't."
But already the pages were turning, and the glow was growing brighter. The glow from the keeper's book spread across the floor, casting long shadows that writhed like living things. Liwen stared at the pages, his heart pounding against his ribs. The words were written in a script he did not recognize, yet somehow he understood them. They whispered promises of power, of protection, of survival. "Choose quickly," the keeper intoned. "The longer you wait, the stronger they become." Liwen felt Zhang Wei tug at his sleeve, desperate. "Teacher, please. Once you give your memory, it will never return. You will lose who you are." The teacher's breath caught. Images of his life flickered in his mind. His parents' faces blurred by time. The laughter of his childhood friends. The first day he walked into this school as a teacher, filled with hope. All of it could vanish with a single choice. "What memory will it take?" Liwen asked, his voice strained. The keeper's mask gleamed pale in the half-light. "Not one you choose. One that is chosen for you." The words struck deep. He could protect the boy, perhaps even stop the shadows, but at the cost of something precious, something he would never know was missing. Zhang Wei shook his head violently. "We can find another way. My grandfather said the library protects, not destroys." The keeper's voice rumbled low. "Your grandfather gave you the key. He knew what was required. Do not mistake protection for mercy." Outside the heavy doors of the library, the storm surged. The humming grew louder, filling the silence with its relentless thrum. They were waiting, pressing closer, hungrier by the second. Liwen looked down at the boy's pleading eyes, then back at the glowing book. The keeper extended its skeletal hand, pages quivering with ancient power. The decision was his. And as he reached forward, the sound of the storm suddenly stopped. The silence was worse. The silence was crushing, so absolute that Liwen could hear his own heartbeat like a drum. Zhang Wei clung to him, both of them staring at the sealed doors of the library. No rain, no thunder, no breath from the shadows. Only emptiness. Then a single knock echoed against the wood. Slow,
Hollow.
deliberate. Liwen froze. The keeper did not move, the mask facing the door as though it could see through the walls. "They wait," it murmured. "But not all of them remain outside." Zhang Wei gasped. "What do you mean?" The keeper closed the black book with a sound like a coffin shutting. "One has already entered." The boy's grip on Liwen tightened. He turned, eyes darting across the towering shelves. The library stretched endlessly, but in the corner of his vision, he saw it, something darker than the shadows themselves, shifting between the rows. It was no longer faceless. It had begun to copy a shape. A human figure, taller than most men, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. And as Liwen stared, it began to wear something like his own outline. The teacher's blood ran cold. It was becoming him. Zhang Wei whispered, his voice breaking. "It will steal your face, and then it will take your place." Liwen stepped back, but the figure mirrored him exactly. When he raised his arm, it raised its arm. When he clenched his fist, it clenched its fist. The mimicry was perfect, except for one detail, its smile, stretching wide where his mouth had not moved at all. The keeper's voice filled the silence. "If it replaces you, child, even your own reflection will not know you are gone." The shadow double began to walk forward, each step echoing in perfect time with Li Wen's heartbeat. And then it spoke, in his own voice. "Give me the boy." The words struck Li Wen like a blade. Hearing his own voice emerge from the shadow was unbearable, twisted as if a mirror had learned to speak. Zhang Wei pressed himself against the bookshelf, his face pale, his hands shaking. "Do not look at it," the keeper warned. "The more you acknowledge its likeness, the stronger it grows." But it was too late. The double smile widened, stretching impossibly across its stolen face. Its eyes were dark pools, reflecting nothing yet holding everything. Li Wen forced his gaze down, refusing to meet its stare. You cannot have him. The shadow double tilted its head, copying the movement exactly. You cannot protect him. It took another step forward. The shelves groaned as if the weight of its presence strained the very wood. Dust rained from above, and the faint glow of the keeper's book dimmed. Zhang Wei clutched Li Wen's arm, whispering fast, terrified words. Teacher, it wants to replace you. If you fight it, you lose yourself. If you ignore it, it grows stronger. What can we do? The keeper extended its skeletal hand. The book contains words to bind it, but to speak them, you must pay the price. The memory. Li Wen's mind raced. If he refused, the double would consume him. If he agreed, he would lose something he might never regain. He thought of his students, his life, his purpose. The double leaned closer, its smile so wide it split across the skin of its stolen face. You are already mine, it whispered in perfect imitation of his voice. The boy screamed. In that moment, Li Wen knew hesitation would kill them both. He reached for the book. The keeper opened it with a sound like tearing fabric, and the words blazed with pale fire. Li Wen's lips moved before he could stop himself, speaking syllables older than time. The double shrieked, its voice tearing through the silence, shaking the shelves. And as the last word left his mouth, the lights in the library shattered. Darkness swallowed them whole. The darkness pressed in on every side. Li Wen staggered, his breath ragged, his voice raw from the words he had spoken. Somewhere in the black, Zhang Wei cried out, searching blindly for him. Teacher Li. The keeper's voice slithered through the void, calm and cold. The binding is complete, but the price has been claimed. A sharp pain struck Li Wen's mind, like something being pulled from deep inside. He clutched his head, gasping. Memories flickered past his eyes, faces, voices, laughter. Then one image froze, and before he could hold onto it, it was gone. He blinked hard. His chest tightened. Something had been taken. He could not remember what. Teacher? Zhang Wei's voice quivered. Are you all right? Li Wen tried to speak, but his throat ached. The darkness shifted, and slowly the glow of the keeper's book returned, faint and trembling. On the floor, the shadow double writhed, its stolen features collapsing into smoke before dissolving into nothing. It was gone, but in its place, an emptiness lingered inside Li Wen's mind, a hollow he could not name. The keeper closed the book, its parchment robes rustling like dead leaves. The boy is safe for now. But this was only a fragment of what hunts him. Beyond these walls, more wait. And they will not stop. Zhang Wei stared at the teacher, his eyes shining with guilt. You gave up something for me. Li Wen placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, though his voice was softer now, uncertain. Whatever I lost, it does not matter. You must live. The keeper stepped back into the shadows between the shelves, its form fading into the silence. The storm will return. When it does, you must choose whether to flee or face what follows. The heavy doors of the library creaked. Slowly they began to open. Beyond them, the sound of the storm rushed back, louder than ever. And through the gap, a chorus of voices whispered, countless and hungry. They were waiting. The library doors groaned wide, and the storm surged back with a roar. Lightning flashed, spilling pale light across the floor. Shadows writhed in the gap, twisting like a sea of black figures clawing to enter. Their whispers overlapped, 1,000 voices weaving into one. Zhang Wei clung to Li Wen, his face streaked with tears. We cannot outrun them. Not anymore. The keeper's voice drifted faint from somewhere deep among the shelves. Every sanctuary has its end. Now the boy must choose, or both of you will be taken. Li Wen turned to Zhang Wei, gripping his shoulders. Listen to me. You hold the key. Whatever your grandfather meant, it was not only to open the library. It is you. You are the key. The boy shook his head in terror. I am just a student. No, Li Wen said firmly, though the hollowness in his mind ached where his memory had been torn away. You were chosen long before tonight. The storm howled through the widening doors. Figures began to slip inside, shapes that bent and broke against the air, reaching with hands that did not belong to this world. Their breath was cold, crawling across the skin. Zhang Wei pressed the brass key to his chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it burned with sudden light, a golden flame bursting from its surface. He gasped, nearly dropping it, but Liwen covered his hand and held it steady. The light spread in waves, pouring across the floor, striking the shadows. The figures screamed, retreating, their voices shrill and broken. Lightning cracked through the room, splitting the storm into silence. And then stillness. The door slammed shut, rattling once before falling quiet. The library stood calm again, as though nothing had happened. Zhang Wei collapsed to his knees, the key cooling in his palm. He looked up at his teacher, eyes wide. Is it over? Liwen stared at the silent shelves, the weight of emptiness still gnawing inside him where his memory once lived. He did not answer, for in the quiet, he could still hear it. A breath. One shadow had not gone, and it was waiting.